You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
So, hey, everybody, Gail Kraft here from the Empowering Process podcast. And with me today is this amazing woman, Emily Aborn. And Emily has this company that she runs, and she built this. And there's such a story around her doing this in the first place. And she's going to share that story with her. And she's going to talk about pivoting, giving yourself permission, and all about your worthiness as an entrepreneur, as an individual, and as a woman. So welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I know. So let's get started and let's talk a little bit about, how you ended up being an entrepreneur. This wasn't really a surprise to you in the first place. And then, things happened where you really needed to change, right?
How far back do you want to go?
As far as you want to go, because I know every year I change. So
to be honest, I have wanted to be I knew I wanted to have my own business and be an entrepreneur since I was 6. And I started, I'm not kidding. So I started with neighborhood newspapers and lemonade stands and things like that. It's just always been a bug inside of me. And I spent my 20s really unsatisfied, working for other people, because I was so entrepreneurial in the workplace that I couldn't fit into all of these molds in working for others. So finally in 2014, my husband and I decided that we were going to go for it. We were going to open a mattress store. And a lot of people think it's really random, and it is really random. But I had the background of working for someone else in the same, almost the exact same kind of business. And so I knew the revenue model, I knew the products inside and out, and it aligned with, I went to school for health education, and sleep and health are obviously very, very intertwined. So I was like, this is perfect. This is right up my alley. It's going to be amazing. I had these visions of people just coming in and out of the store all the time. Well, when you actually decide to open a mattress store, it is not a lot of people coming in and out of the store all the time. And also to further kind of, we had a very niche market. It was very high end, natural and non-toxic bedding. So that kind of makes it so that even less people are coming in, right?
Right.
Still very successful, just not at all very satisfying for the kind of person that myself or my husband were. And I'm really happy I went through the process, but it taught us so much that I went home one day and I was like, this is awful. And we thought we were going to be doing this for the next 30 years, and that's what I really thought. I was like, wow, we have to deal with this for 30 years. And he's like, we get to change, we get to make the decisions here and change our mind if this isn't working. And I was
awesome.
Light bulb. So what do we want to do, And so that's, I guess, where it started, bringing me to where I am now.
Right. And there was, I recall our conversation before, you talked about a friend of yours and a happening with her, which was a wake-up call for you to get moving and do what you want in your life, right?
Yeah. We were actually in process of kind of making our shift when that happened. But I did have a very close friend. Her name was Anna, and she passed away very suddenly at 32. And when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, life is not guaranteed to us. And, she was very unhappy in her work life. And it broke my heart. And I was committed, I'm I'm going to help her. We're going to get to the other side together, both of us, through this. And that just didn't end up happening. And she didn't get that chance to live the life of joy and happiness that she wanted to and have a fulfilling career. Right. And I just think no matter what it is, whether it's your relationship or your career or, your health, life is really too short for us to be unhappy doing what we're doing day in and day out. And a lot of that comes to, down to our choices that we're making and the thoughts we're telling ourselves. But that was a big turning point for me.
Yeah, right. And, for me, I've learned to pay attention to those messages that may not be directly at me, but they're being presented to me. Right. So then you decided to walk away from the beds and mattresses and move into this role as an entrepreneur. Is that when you actually created She Built This right away?
Okay, so She Built This came from an event. It was a lovely event that I had heard the podcast, How I Built This, I think it's called. And I was like, this would be fantastic if we took New Hampshire entrepreneurs and like heard their stories of leadership and the struggles they've gone on. And so my friend Kristen and I put together this event, and I think we expected, yay, we'll be lucky if 80 people show up. And there were 155 women there. And the energy in the room was like nothing you've ever felt. And I'm like, this is something, like, we all want to come together and build each other up and cheer each other on and go through this journey together. So then that's when I created, it just started as a Facebook group, and it's built into such a community that's like, people are intertwined with one another and building business, but also building relationships outside of that. So, so that's how it started. But I at the same time sort of like, I went and got my real estate license thinking that would be like a thing that I wanted to do.
Self-fulfilling, right?
Yeah. Well, I quickly realized it's not my personality. It doesn't work for my personality. Like, I don't really like to be on the go, and that's an entirely on the go job. Like, I like things to be very certain and, routine and things like that. And that's just the opposite. So I took the whole course and got my license. And then I was like, I don't think this is for me. But what it did do is launched me into what I'm doing now, because I joined a real estate team and they had me doing like their social media posts. And they paid me, I think it was like, it was pennies. It was like $100 a month, to do. Yeah, it was terrible to do social media posts for them. And I did it for a couple other people, and I would like help them with the content for their blogs and stuff. So that's kind of how I started. And I started branding myself as a virtual assistant, which like I'm still working to unwind from some people's heads. I'm like, no, I do not want that title for me, right? Just in what I've progressed into.
It's not what you do, really.
Right. So, but it's taken me 2 years to really solidify that, like, content, the content for those things is what I want to be focusing on, not even the social media aspect, because I don't love social media, to be honest.
I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah, right? It's so good, right? But so bad.
I know. Every once in a while I think, that's it, I'm getting off. I was like, no, you're really not.
You'll be back.
Exactly. So, She Built This went through a transition last year. I know I was attending the event that you had planned, and you turned it into an online pajama party or something. It was really very creative. I'm like,
oh, thank you.
Really cool, right? So talk a little bit about pivoting last year.
Yeah, it's been challenging because I don't love online events, and we're all being so bombarded with them. But the pajama party I kind of got lucky because I was like one of the first people to do that in our world,
Right.
So what I did around it is I created a group around the event so that it kind of built up excitement like the whole week before, and people could network. You can't network like you're networking in person, but at least you could network and connect more deeply as a group,
Right.
So then, we had to pivot that one. And this whole year has just been like, I've done so many online events now, and they feel scary when you're putting it together. Like, I'm like, is this one going to work? But I think it's been a really good learning lesson. I can say that I cannot wait to do it in person again. Like, that is really, there's just something about an online event that you can't match the energy,
Well, so I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
So you can imagine feeling a little deprived, right? And I am getting the vaccination just so people feel comfortable with me hugging them, right? And I am looking forward to the first person that I hang on to and I don't let them go.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. I think I don't know about you, but I guess I've taken for granted this whole, it's been an entire year since we've really felt comfortable doing those kinds of things. I mean, I've hugged my friends, but we're both wearing masks and it's like quick,
right,
like
and it goes away, right?
Yeah,
right. It's like a little pat, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, it's still not the same. And I'm very thankful for those places that I can go to where I don't have to have a mask on. Because there's distancing and the sanitation is beyond what's necessary, so that I can at least hold conversations with people face to face, right? And during the whole quarantine, it wasn't really a quarantine, it was self-quarantine. I still met people outside at picnic benches, and right, I still wanted that personal contact, right? But through all of this, and we talk about feeling worthy, feeling like you deserve what it is that you're going for. So for me, I've got a podcast coming out, obviously, right? And I question, through this whole process, am I good enough? Do I have the right people that I'm interviewing? The subject matter is anything that really interests folks. And I've surveyed people and I've quantified their responses and, queued it all up and, done all of the market research I can, right? To be sure that what I want to do is something that people want to hear, but I still am ready to pull the trigger, right? I've sent my email out this week that says, hey, it's coming. And am I good enough? And that is not gender specific. It happens to men and women. But talk a little bit about your experience with this evil thing.
It's funny. I want to read you a quote. I actually haven't turned my quote thing over to today yet. So yesterday's was never give up, for that is just the place and time that the tide will turn. And that's Harriet Beecher Stowe. And I love that because it's so true. Like right when you get on the cusp of something you're about to dive all into, you want to tap on the brakes like furiously. And you're coming up against all sorts of things. Sometimes it's not feeling good enough. Sometimes it's like, I'm not an expert yet. I need to go take another course. Sometimes it's, well, this person is already doing that. And so why would I bother putting out the same thing that they're putting out? So these two topics are kind of separate, but first and foremost, like you should, and it's great to research. But that doesn't make you worthy of your dream. It doesn't make you worthy or less worthy if it fails. I think that was something like pretty big with the first business is I'm like, okay, everybody knew me as this person. And now I've basically failed as this person,
Right.
But does that mean I'm a failure? And does that mean I'm going to fail at the next thing? No. No. So I think just disconnecting yourself from like being so intertwined in your worthiness having anything to do with the results, because they're just two completely different things.
Right. And that's so interesting. When I first started as an entrepreneur, right, I was a successful business person, right? I knew how to manage a department and grow a business and, take complex projects and make them happen. That has nothing to do with being an entrepreneur, right? Because there was never a failure in that process. There really never was a failure because there was always enough resources to pull it out, right? And as an entrepreneur, when I started, I had coaches for everything. A network marketing coach, a marketing coach, personal marketing coach, communication coach, right? The whole 9 yards. And I had funnel processes and, I used Infusionsoft, which was the best on the market. And I spent thousands of dollars, launched and bombed, right? And I was devastated. And I had to sit back and say, okay, so what was going on here that I bombed. Now,
Mm.
fortunately, my coaching was doing okay, but I had wanted to grow it. So I still, so I knew that, okay, so you're a good coach, that's still working. But I realized that it was not me in particular, it was me not being me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's a great point.
Right. Right. And so, so how can our listeners feel comfortable with being who they are and know that failure, right, is really a lesson? I want to change that word. I want to shoot that word out of the English language, right? Right? That it's a growth opportunity, right? And sometimes expensive and sometimes timely. But
When I was in high school, it was probably the best class I ever took. I don't even remember what the actual class was, but we had to read the book Failing Forward. I think it's by John Maxwell. But so we read this book Failing Forward and had to like pull out all of the lessons in that book. And I kid you not, when we closed the doors of that first business, like I went back to all of those principles and I'm like, what am I going, even with the real estate license, like I tried it and I'm like, nope, that's not for me. And it's just like, how can I use this as a lesson to go forward? And I guess I would venture to say that you can even draw on experiences in the past. Like you were saying that your in your work life, you didn't experience failure in the same way, but you built up all of these muscles that you can use when you are facing failure,
Right.
And
Right.
so, and we're doing that all the time. Like we are building up a resiliency for that. And I think the other important thing is not to mentally set yourself up at the beginning thinking that you're going to fail, like act as if you are going to succeed, because that's the best possible mindset you could have going in.
Right.
I hope I answered your question.
Oh, good enough. Right. And yes, so the mindset of success. First of all, I don't think anybody takes that first step without believing that they will succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Many people don't take the first step though, because they don't believe, they think of all of the reasons why not. Right. It's the second step. Right. So you take the first step and it's like, okay, it's pretty solid ground. Will the second step be as solid as the first step? Right. So my first business was called Take the Next Step, because so it's just take one step. Right. Okay, let's stop. You're okay. You didn't die. Cool. What's the next step? Let's take the next step. Right. As a gradual pushing forward to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
For some of my clients, and I know I mentioned this in one of my other podcasts, but it's such a powerful story that I will probably tell it over and over again. I have a client who is literally a manifester. She is able to create. But when it's time to pull the trigger, she backs off every single time. Every single time. And I have literally said, look, we're on the edge, like you said, ready to jump. And this is going to be the best trip ever. I've got your hand. We're doing it together. There's nothing but success ahead. And then, she's all of a sudden working on a different project. Right. And so it's getting into that fear that is so deep seated. And for some of us, so far back and so intertwined in our upbringing that we don't even realize that it's there. Right?
Have you read The Big Leap?
No. Is that a book I need to put on my reading list?
I mean, there is also such a thing as a fear of success, and people have a lot of different reasons for it. It might be a parent looking down on you because you're successful, or you're afraid of what will happen in your life if you have too much money. So, there's a fear of failure, and that's very, very real, and it can stop you, but so can a fear of success. So it'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know this person personally, but it would be interesting to see what is truly behind what's stopping her.
Right. So the fear of success, I have a small podcast that I did on that. And it's really, really interesting, because the first time I realized I had that fear to deal with, I used to crew for motivational speakers, right? And I was at this huge event. And when you have exercises, you need like an even number of people in that group and an even number, right? So if a group needs someone, the crew steps in. So I stepped in on this exercise. And the exercise was about what's holding you back, right? And I wrote down, I'm afraid to lose my friends, right? And I didn't realize consciously that that was going on. And so the presenter is like, okay, so who wants to share? And, you know, I'll share anything. And I said, yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to leave people behind. And he said, oh, so you have the fear of success? And I went, no. He said, oh, yes, you do. Because you will leave people behind. And I have, right? I have, you know, what used to be, because we don't speak the same language anymore, right? But I've learned to think that's okay, right? Because that created space for new and amazing people that do speak my language now to come in, right? So it's not a disrespect to them. It's not a destruction of a relationship. It's just a natural evolution and an ending of a relationship. And that's healthy.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So yes, you're right. Fear of success. I should go back and re-examine whether or not fear of success might be what the issue is. She's working on a project now with more than one person. And I think because it's a team, she'll move forward for the team's sake. Right. Right. So we'll see what's happening there.
maybe that's her secret workaround.
That's fine, as long as she succeeds, because she's amazing, right? Just absolutely amazing. So one of the things that you talked about was resilience during our conversation. So talk a little bit, if you will, a little bit deeper about what that looks like to you as far as being, I call it the bounce back, being able to bounce back, right?
So sometimes it looks like having a big old pity party after you fail at something and letting yourself wallow in those feelings and really feel those feelings. And then when you're done doing that, it's picking yourself back up and like, you know, sometimes it's a complete 180 that you have to do. And sometimes it's, how can I try this again differently? So I think resilience to me is if something doesn't go how you hoped, it's asking yourself the questions of why and what can I be doing instead, either better or different, or, you know, it could be entirely different in some cases. But yeah, I think like I am a very perseverant person. So like, you know, I have, obviously this is entrepreneurship is kind of like a little bit of a roller coaster. And so I have these down
Very
days.
much a roller coaster. Yeah. Come on.
Right. When I'm like, I just want to throw in the towel. And what's another thing that I think helps in my resiliency toolbox is having really quality people around me that believe in what I'm doing, and me being able to openly share those moments with them when they come up. And then they can, like, you know, we take turns. Like one day they're having a bad day and I'm like, come on, we got this. And another day I am, and they can just help you like dust yourself off, put on clearer glasses that give you a clearer picture of what's really going on, because sometimes it's just mental stuff that we're battling or emotional stuff and not accurately seeing something for what it is. And then carry on, you know?
And then carry on. Right. So what happens with me, what I do is, and this comes from corporate when, you know, I ran very high level projects for big companies. And I was always very specific with the first thing. What's the purpose? Why are we doing there? Right. And if the purpose wasn't clear, I would spend a lot of time on, before building a team or anything. Why are we doing this? Right. Because I was taught that that's your guiding light. Right. And you can do anything if you know why. And if you are thrown off track, which is what being an entrepreneur is, there is no track. Right. And there is no roadmap. You go by your gut. But if you have the guiding light, you can always sit back and say, is that crystal clear enough? Right? And does that resonate with me?
Mhm.
Did I create a purpose that matters enough that I'll find the right road to get there? It doesn't matter how, and that's a little Simon Sinek, yes, right? Adore the man. But it really is so, so true, because that transcends anything, right?
And sometimes your why is just because you need to, be able to put food on the table for your family. And that's a great why,
That's
so
very compelling.
I totally agree with you that staying focused on that, no matter what it is really helpful for staying resilient.
Absolutely. So quick little story for me going way back. When my daughter was about a year and a half, I left my husband and I went on welfare because I wasn't working. I had nothing. And I looked at her and looked at how we would be living and said, yeah, this is not going to happen. And I went back to work with the purpose of creating a better life for her. And it cost me, I made more money on welfare than working because I had to pay childcare, I had to do transportation, right? No longer had food stamps, right? The whole 9 yards. But within a year, I was buying my own home. Within 2 years, I was managing at Mass Teachers Association. I was making very good money, right? That does not happen staying on welfare, but she was my guiding light, right? That she was not going to grow up in this kind of environment, right? That I was going to give her more than what this opportunity was presenting to me. So yeah, it absolutely putting food on the table, roof over our head that we could be proud of, right?
And I guess just tying it back to the worthiness theme, like we are worthy of being able to set into motion what we want to set into motion. And so that can be part of your why too, is why? Because I am worthy to have this dream and to pursue this dream.
Right, right. And everybody is, right? I look forward to the time, and it might not be this lifetime. I might have to come back again to see this, right? Where everybody can express their worthiness. Right? That there is freedom around the world for people to execute what's important to them, to achieve a life of love and happiness. Because that's what else is there without that, right? It really, really, all the money in the world isn't going to buy that, but I will tell you, it does buy you lots of fun.
I wouldn't know yet, Gail.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh. I mean, I really, when I was in corporate, and I do fine now, but man, in corporate, my husband was a pilot. So we would rent a plane and fly to Martha's Vineyard to go swimming for the day and fly back.
Fun.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want to do today? I don't know. It's beautiful. I want to go swimming. Sure. Let's rent a plane. Go. Yeah. Right. Very, very decadent, but lots and lots and lots of fun and the freedom. And that's another thing that maybe that would be another podcast. Maybe I'll do something on money, because money is just a tool to freedom. And you can feel freedom without a lot of money, right? It just depends on what your desires are and what it is that you want to do. And it is something that we all adjust to very, very easily, right? I knew as a manager that I can give someone a raise and that would make them happy for about 2 weeks, right? And I had 50 other weeks that I had to deal with, right? as motivation and inspiration for people to want to be in the desk sitting, when it was beautiful out, and sitting in the office and grinding the day out, how to make it worthwhile for them. Right. And that's not easy to do. And it borders on manipulation. And I argued with an HR rep one time about the difference between motivation and manipulation. right? Because I felt what he was teaching and what he was propelling was manipulation, and I was into motivation versus, carrot stick. Not going to do that. Not going to do that. But I'm going to make it so that when you come into work, you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you feel that you can be creative, right? That you have the flexibility to get your job done in your way, as long as you got the job done, right?
Yeah, motivation. I think you're right. It's really about seeing the person for who they are and what they're striving for and helping them to achieve those goals rather than manipulation that is just about control and your desires.
Right, exactly. So yeah, wow, we could be doing a few other podcasts together, I think. So, the point being, and the purpose of this kind of conversation is, folks, whatever it is that you want to achieve, you're not necessarily an entrepreneur, because there's lots to achieve in corporate America, as long as you know who you are, you know what your values are, you know what you want out of life, and that those are not being compromised in the role that you're playing. Right? The second that they're compromised, you need to reevaluate where you are and where you're going. Right? It's like you with that first job.
And it might be something as simple as changing your role in an organization, or just feeling comfortable to ask for what you need. So sometimes it's not always, you don't have to burn everything down.
No.
Right. Sometimes it's just making a little tiny shift and being able to ask for what you need that gets you closer to living that.
Or even being clear. I had a client that came to me and she wanted to, I'm invisible. I want to leave my job. I'm going to leave my kids. I'm going to leave my husband. And I'm like, well, not at first, right? You can leave your job once we solve the problem that's going on right now. Once that's solved, then we can discuss leaving the job. And, I won't, it's bizarre what we did, but within 2 weeks, she sent me an email. She said, my boss wants me to help him build his next empire. She went from feeling invisible to her boss wanting her. So she did not leave that job.
Wow.
Right. And it was all about her own perception and her own feeling of worthiness, right? And feeling empowered, and then giving off that energy so people could see who she was, right? And that, of course, affected her relationships. And we worked on the family and the husband relationship, and they're still together. And here we are years later. So that's fine.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she's doing amazing, right? And so, yes, you're right. When there's an out of balance, you need to sit back. So what's the small shift? I'm not big, like I said, take the next step. I'm not big on big changes, because that creates chaos that sometimes puts us in a spiral, right? It may shoot you up, but then you're going to spiral down, right? I'm all about it consistently moving towards an objective in a positive, energetic way, right? As you are. I love, by the way, people will have information at the end where Emily's going to tell you how to get in touch with her. You need to be part of her group. It's absolutely amazing. You need to go to her event the next time that it's up. Doesn't matter where you are. Yes, she's in New Hampshire, but what she does is not local flavor. What she does is transcends for sure. And she is remarkable. I can tell you, how did I hear about you? I think everywhere I turned when I moved to New Hampshire, it's like, you need to go to Emily's event. You need to talk to Emily. I was like, yeah. Okay. Right. And then, I did sign up for the event, and then got to know you a little bit through your communications on Facebook. And
well, thank you.
It's just amazing. So tell us, Emily, a little bit more about She Built This and your online presence, and then how people can connect with you if they so want to.
Okay. And I just want to really quickly touch back on what you were saying about taking small steps. That's like somebody right now in our group is going through a big transition, and everybody is saying the same thing, like just one thing at a time, like let's make a plan. And Gail and I talked about this before we started recording. So sometimes your plans, you don't follow them to perfection, but having a plan, taking small steps, and not like just lighting everything on fire. That's truly, I think, the way. I mean, that's how we achieve most things. So, all right. So on that note, the group is open. It's free and open for all. However, I have a paid community that is also like, we do workshops every month, and those people get visibility into the main group, which is like, 1,300 people. So you're really getting the opportunity to put yourself in front of all of those people. So that you can learn about either one, free or paid, at shebuiltthis.org. And that's probably the easiest way to just easily find everything as far as me. But on Instagram, it's She Built This Group. And on Facebook, it's just She Built This.
Emily, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story and just having an honest conversation with me, which
Thank
is
you.
so
Thanks
refreshing. It's
Thank
great.
you so much.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you so much for listening to us. This is the Empowering Process podcast. If you like this, please do like it, do share it. If you know somebody who might benefit from this, let them know. Comment below. We're here for you. Thank you again, Emily. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailkraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.